Hello, everybody at home and at school. Hope everyone's doing well. Yeah, today we're going to start poetry, real small mini unit. Still talking about the rites of passage and all that stuff, all the stuff we've been talking about since the beginning of the year. But since this is the first time that we're talking about poetry, let me just introduce two words to you. The first one is stanza, and we'll see that when we start writing or reading poetry. Don't have to write it. Don't have to write it. A lot of people were worried that you'd have to write it right now. No, just we're reading it today. Even for this, maybe in the fourth quarter, things will change. But right now, we're just working on some prose, which is actually in this definition. So I'll talk about prose in a minute. But a stanza is like a paragraph. Maybe I could show you. Where is it? So excuse me, it's a long one. The poem that we'll be reading is called Hanging Fire. But this right here is the first stanza. So I can highlight it in pink. I'll highlight the next one in green. So usually with stanzas, you skip a line, you don't indent. But now I've highlighted that stanza 2, that stanza 1. It's just a way of organizing poetry. That's it. And I'll refer to that more as we're reading the poem. Okay, but that's the first one, stanza. And the second one, I mentioned it already, it's prose. Prose, spelled like that down there. This is basically the opposite of poetry. So Criers Cross is written in prose. Everything by Stephen King's written in prose. It's basically those two things. It's either prose, or poetry. Prose or poetry. So this is the first item we'll be reading that isn't prose. It's poetry. All right. With that out of the way, let's take a look at this first poem. Now, I've read these a couple times to practice, so I'm a little nervous. Poetry's hard to read. Again, that may be, we've talked about in class, that may be one reason why people hate poetry. And the other thing is, poetry is a lot like a song. It's meant to be read multiple times, just like a song is meant to be heard over and over again. You know, if it's a good song, you want to listen to it quite a bit. I know I've listened to some songs, like when I get on to a song that I really like, I'll listen to it the entire day on repeat. So the same thing is true for poetry. It's meant to be read a few times, maybe often. I don't know. Maybe throughout your life. Some people like revisiting poems every so often throughout their life. I don't know if these poems will be those type of poems. But the first one is called, it might be a little hard to read, because it's all highlighted. Maybe I'll unhighlight it. How about that? Can I unhighlight it? Oh, that'd be embarrassing. I think I can. Wait, delete. Yes. Okay. So this may sound familiar. Andre Lorde. Maybe we should take a look at the background a little bit. So 2 poems here. I mean, I know this is probably everybody's least favorite, but often when you look at the background, it's going to help you with the actual reading. So Hanging Fire, adolescence. You probably all know what that is. It's basically, growing up, childhood. Adolescence can be a challenging stage of life, with childhood left behind, but adulthood not yet reached. In Hanging Fire, Andre Lorde explores the frustrating feeling that can arise from the contradictions of being a young adult. So, contradictions, those are things that are completely opposite of one another. So maybe, you're old enough to stay by yourself for the weekend. You're capable of doing that. You can make your own meals, whatever. But then if your parents go away for the weekend, they have someone check in on you or something. And, it's like, I can do it myself. But, with contradictions, there's always that but. So it's tough because, teenagers, you're capable of doing most things on your own, but parents have to come in and reel you back in like, whoa, hey, wait a second. At least the good parents do that, right? At least the good parents do. All right, so let's get into a little bit of the next poem here. Get rid of that. Translating Grandfather's House. In the poem, E.J. Vega mentions Zorro. Okay, Zorro. They're going to tell us what Zorro is, but I don't think many people around today know what Zorro is, way before my time, too. A popular fictional character originally created in 1919 by writer Johnston McCulley. In McCulley's novel, Zorro is a heroic outlaw and a skilled sword fighter who wears a mask to hide his true identity. He's actually a wealthy nobleman named Diego de la Vega. One time we have mentioned actually Zorro in this class. One time. Maybe I'll pause it in case anybody knows it. I mean, it's like literally one time, one line. So probably I've paused it. Maybe somebody has guessed. If nobody in the classroom guessed, let me tell you. Well, I have to tell you anyways, but Margot Ross Spiegelman. So Zorro would often have a sword. Since his name starts with Zorro, he would leave some slashes, maybe in some wood or the side of a building or whatever, in the form of a Z. And then Margot Ross Spiegelman did the same thing with an M. I think after she broke into her boyfriend's house or something like that, right? Jace's house. She left an M, a spray painted M, and she did it kind of like Zorro. All right. So now you know a little background. That might be helpful when we get to the actual reading of the poems. All right. Let's get rid of that. Do we care about you probably don't care about the authors. I know you don't, but we should know about them a little bit anyway. Okay. Hanging Fire. Audre Lorde. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. She's passed away. May she rest in peace. Was a Caribbean American poet and a civil rights activist. Her poetry and writing addresses social prejudices and injustices. She was the Poet Laureate of New York from 1991 until her death. So I think every state has a Poet Laureate. I know the country has a Poet Laureate. And it's basically, I think the president picks it for the country. It's like, hey, you are like our national poet. And I think Maine has one. I don't know who the Poet Laureate is of Maine, though. But it's a pretty good honor. If you're a poet and you're picked to be your state's top poet, quite an honor. All right, let's learn about the next person here. Make it bigger. Boom. Translating Grandfather's House. This is E.J. Vega. Well, supposedly he's still alive unless something happened recently. He's an award-winning poet, novelist, and journalist. He was born in Cuba, or I think as the native Cubans call it, Cuba. I could be wrong on that. And worked as a sailor on tugboats and ocean barges. He has degrees in writing, literature, journalism from Brooklyn College and Columbia University. Very good university, by the way. Ivy League. Hard to get into. Must be a very smart man. He lives in New York City. All right, so let's get rid of this and let's start reading the poems. Oh, why don't we go to everybody's favorite, the standards. Oh, can you imagine if, I bet some teachers do actually read all of this stuff. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're not going to do that. No way. Nah. All right, how do we get to the poems here? Oh no. How do I get to the poems? X, just a bunch of X's? Okay, here we are. Well, that's all highlighted? We don't want that all highlighted, do we? Oh, remember how hard it is to get rid of the highlights? Let's go. Get rid of it. Yes. Okay. Hanging Fire. Audre Lorde. Listen, you could.
Hanging Fire by Audre Lorde.
Audre Lorde. Yeah. Well, at least we learned something from that, but I'm not going to have this person read the whole thing. I'll read it. You may hate that. You probably hate that. But hopefully you are paying attention and all that, and you can hear whatever this hanging fire is about. Now, the way I read this, it's a little tricky And each poem almost has its own rhythm or its own meter. And at the end of a line, and this one does not have punctuation, but at the end of a line of poetry, you aren't going to stop. Okay. You aren't going to stop unless there is a comma there, which you might stop. If there's a period, you should definitely stop. So it's just like with prose, a period is often the end of a thought. Excuse me. A stanza, also the end of a bigger thought. I don't know if you noticed here, but these poems, they actually, excuse me, they actually don't have this poem here doesn't have any punctuation until the end right there. The end of that stanza. Oh, let's get rid of this too. And the end of delete. Yes, I do. And the end of this stanza. Let me get my glasses on, but I think that's it. So sometimes before you read the poem, it is important to look to where you're stopping. The more you read poetry, and I haven't read a ton, I'll be honest. I read way more prose than I read poetry. But the more you are, in high school, I bet you'll get some more poetry. The more you read it, the more you get comfortable with it. Just like anything else in life, the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it. So let's finally get into some of this reading. Luckily, the poems are quite short. So we've gotten all the background done and we can start reading. All right. Hanging Fire. Oh, can I hide this? Yes, I can. We need more screen space here. I am 14 and my skin has betrayed me. So that sounds almost like a sentence. Maybe at that point I'll pause. I am 14 and my skin has betrayed me. The boy I cannot live without still sucks his thumb in secret. How come my knees are always so ashy? What if I die before morning and mama's in the bedroom with the door closed? So she's being very honest with us, but a lot of these thoughts, we have, now with winter coming, it's the time of the year where dry skin, everything is so dry around here. Be sure to hydrate, but everything gets so dry around here. The part of your back that you can't reach, it's always so dry. I know when I lie in bed at the end of the day, it's like, oh man, itchy. You got to always reapply that lotion. Ashy. So she's talking about her skin being ashy. That happens to all of us, right? The next one here. Let me make myself smaller. Next stanza. I have to learn how to dance in time for the next party. My room is too small for me. Suppose I die before graduation. They will sing sad melodies, but finally tell the truth about me. There is nothing I want to do, and too much that has to be done. And mama's in the bedroom with the door closed. Now, that's the second time this has been repeated. Mama's in the bedroom with the door closed. So I'm thinking the poet wants us to realize that. And at this point, it's like, oh no. Why? Well, a couple things. Maybe I'll pause the video right here. We could talk about it. If you're at home and watching this, I'm sorry. Sorry. You won't be able to participate in the class discussion. But mama's bedroom door is closed. Why? I mean, I don't want to say too much. It could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. And her mind is on death quite a bit, right? In both stanzas, she has mentioned, what if I die? So that's on her mind. It seems like she's almost preoccupied with the idea of death. And hey, guess what? It's a pretty scary thing. All right, the next one, the last one. Nobody even stops to think about my side of it. I should have been on math team. My marks were better than his. Why do I have to be the one wearing braces? I have nothing to wear tomorrow. Will I live long enough to grow up? And mama's in the bedroom with the door closed. I don't know. There are a whole lot of things. And obviously, that's another thing people hate about poetry. We don't get any answers. Some poems we do, but it is not unlike a poet to just leave it with so many questions. And I have questions. I have questions about the mother. Yeah, I don't know. But that's the good and the bad thing about English class, especially with poetry. I can read it one way. I have my thoughts. Somebody else can read it a different way. They can interpret it a different way. Interpret it. Not easy to say. They can interpret it differently. All right, the next one, translating grandfather's house. I don't know. Tell me, in the comments or whatever, if you like that or not. That first one. Translating grandfather's house. The next one by E.J. Vega. Ooh, it's about the same length. I'm sure most people are like, come on, tell me it's shorter. Tell me it's shorter. We're almost done here. Not too bad. Almost done here. Not too bad. Translating grandfather's house. E.J. Vega. I think I've said that 3 times. Let's see. Can I play this? I don't hear anything. Oh, it's broken. Well, it's a good thing that I'm reading it. Yeah, I don't hear anything. Hopefully the microphone's still working. All right, according to my sketch, rows of lemon and mango trees frame the courtyard of grandfather's stone and clapboard house. The shadow of a palmerino. I don't know what that is. Do you? Palomino. It's a horse with a light golden coat and a white mane and tail. That's another reason people don't like poetry. Often they'll use words that we don't use often just because they want a certain rhythm, a certain meter to the poem. The shadow of a palomino gallops on the lip of the horizon. Now, with context clues, we might have been able to figure out, well, how many things do you know that gallop? Probably going to be a horse, right? On the horizon, do most people horizon? The distant line where the sky appears to meet the surface of the earth. It's really great when you go see the sunrise at a beach, which I did this past summer, Old Orchard Beach. Pretty fun. And you can see like way out into the ocean and the sun rising out on the horizon. The sun rising out on the horizon. That's poetry. I just made up a poem. The teacher says the house is from some Zorro movie I've seen. Ask my mom. I protest. She was born there, right there on the second floor. Crossing her arms, she moves on. All right, so there's some clues right there. Obviously, if somebody crosses their arms, a little body language there, they're probably not happy. Memories, once certain as rivets, become confused as awakenings in strange places. And I question the house, the horse, the wrens perched on the slate roof, the roof of Oscar Jardin, tumbled from one hot Tuesday. Installing a new weather vane, he broke his shin and 2 fingers. Classmates finished drawings of New York City. Housing projects on Navy Street. I draw one too, with wild grass rising from sidewalk cracks like widows. In big round letters, I title it Grandfather's House. Beaming, the teacher scrawls an A+ in the corner and tapes it to the green blackboard. All right, what the heck? Can anybody make any sense out of that? Probably not. I think the first one was pretty straightforward. I think it's good if you reread poems a couple times. They make sense. But I often think that poets, when they write a poem, something like this, about this size, it might be the same as a chapter in a book. So those poets took a lot of time. They wanted to make sure each word was correct. It's like a really fine drawing, like a very small detail. So with prose, every word isn't completely important. I mean, some might be just filler. But with poetry, every single word should be important. And after reading that first poem once, you might think, kind of have an idea. But if we read it again, some of the words, as you were trying to take in the whole thing, some of the words may pop out, some of the ideas may pop out. That last one about the grandfather's house, I think I would need to read that a few more times to understand it. But, and I think of it as like when you're shoveling during a snowstorm, and if you're shoveling your driveway, you get down to the blacktop or to the tar every so often, but then some more snow may come, and then you have to clear it away again. That's my metaphor for reading poetry. So one time reading it, you might get a pretty good idea, but then the snow comes and clouds it even more. So you gotta shovel again, and eventually the snow will stop, and then you'll have that nice clean driveway. Do you have to shovel? I have to shovel this winter. I'm not looking forward to it. But eventually, after reading the poem a few times, after shoveling your driveway a few times during a big snowstorm, you'll eventually get it. So we will probably, you don't want to hear this, but we will probably read this again tomorrow. There is no work for these poems yet. So with poetry, we've got to read it a couple times. So hope you enjoyed the class. I hope it wasn't too boring. If you're completely confused by those poems, don't worry. We'll read it again, maybe 2 more times, maybe 3 more times, and then eventually it might make more sense. All right. Thanks for watching. Guess you had to, right? I was just playing here. But if you're at home and you finish the video, thanks for watching. All right. Adios.